Hey guys, it's Vicky, and today I'm coming at you with some recommendations. Some Stephen King recommendations, to be exact. I was thinking about it, and I think that 2017 is like a big year for Stephen King. He has two books coming out this year, which has kind of been his kind of normal for the past few years, 2 books a year. One of which just came out in May, Wendy's Button Box, and then in the fall he has a book coming out called Sleeping Beauties that he co-wrote with his son Owen, which is pretty cool. So he's got that going on. We have the long-awaited Dark Tower film adaptation coming out in August, and also the remake of It, which just looks so awesome. I am so excited to see that movie. And then also his novella The Mist, which was also made into a movie years ago, but is now being made into a TV series. I can't remember what network it's on, but all in all, it seems like Stephen King's having a pretty big year, so I figured this would be a good time to put out some recommendations for those out there who maybe haven't read Stephen King or they're not really sure where to start. So I'm going to do that for you today. So before I get started with the recommendations, I thought it would be kind of cool or fun, I don't know, to give you like a little bit of backstory of my Stephen King experience. So if that's something that maybe you're not interested in, you just want to see the books, then maybe just, go down your little slidey thing on the bottom and just skip forward in the video until you see me flashing some books right here. But otherwise, I thought I would have some fun here telling you guys how I started reading Stephen King. So when I was 11, I read my first Stephen King book. I had outgrown, I was reading a lot of R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike and those kinds of books, Goosebumps and Fear Street. I was really into those. But by the time I was 11, I kind of outgrown them. And I wanted to take the next step up into like adult horror. And my mom had a ton of Stephen King books like laying around all the time. And so I wanted to read Stephen King. And of course, I wanted to go for the big kahuna. I wanted to read It, like first and foremost. I had seen the made-for-TV movie, and that's the one I wanted. But my mom was like, you know what, slow your roll, kid, because that book is probably too much for you right now. It's super long, and it has some themes in it that just might be a little too much for you. So the book that she recommended to me, though, and that I ended up reading first, was Dolores Claiborne, which is kind of funny because that book has some pretty mature elements as well, so thanks, Mom. But it's about a woman who basically she plots to kill her husband because he is abusive, and she also finds out that he is sexually abusing their daughter. So yeah, there's nothing supernatural or anything like that about Dolores Claiborne. It's actually very grounded in reality, and it was very good. I liked it, and that was kind of how I started with Stephen King. But anyways, so over the years though, thanks to Goodreads, I've been able to kind of track how many Stephen King books I've read, and I've read 36 books, which is probably about half, honestly, of what he has written total, including novels, novels he's written under his pseudonym Richard Bachman, nonfiction books, short story collections. So he's got a huge catalog, and I've probably read about half. So I'm going to recommend a couple of books that I think would be good and approachable for people that haven't read Stephen King and might be a little intimidated by some of his bigger books, because I know a lot of people want to go right for It or The Stand, which are like fantastic books. To me, they're like two of his best books. They're great, but they're chunky. They're over 1,000 pages, both of them. And that can be kind of intimidating, especially for an author you've never read before. So I figured I would recommend some books that are maybe a little bit on the shorter side for him, and but are also very, very good. Okay, so my first Stephen King recommendation that I have for you is Salem's Lot, and this is one of his early books. And the reason I like it so much, it is a classic vampire story about this vampire that comes into this small town, and slowly all of the people in the town start becoming vampires. And that's what makes the story so great, is that the vampires are your classic vampires. They just want to suck your blood. They don't want to be friends. They don't want to, be in love with you or any of that stuff. They're just your classic vampire monster. And the way that he writes it, this little town just slowly being overcome by vampires, is it's just cool and creepy, and I really enjoyed that one, so I would definitely recommend Salem's Lot. Next up we have Cujo, which is a simple enough story. It's about a woman and her little boy, and they are trapped in a car because outside of the car is a rabid St. Bernard dog that basically, if they get out of the car, this dog is going to kill them. So they're trapped in their car, they can't get out, there's nobody around because they're in the middle of nowhere. And it's also like the height of summer, so it's blazing hot, and they're trapped in this car, and it's kind of horrific because that idea of like claustrophobia and not being able to go anywhere and escape is very prevalent in that book. And also, I loved the idea that it was about fate and how the little decisions that we make in life can sometimes bring us into situations that are horrible, like being trapped in a car. And I really loved that book. I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and the reason was because there's something that happens at the end of the book that I'm not going to say that I just didn't agree with. I thought it was, I don't know, I just didn't like it, and it knocked it down a peg for me. But I don't feel so bad because even Stephen King himself has said that he wished he had written the ending a little bit differently. So, but yeah, that is a really good book, really approachable, and just a really good story. My next recommendation is Dreamcatcher, and this is one that if you are interested in reading it, you would probably like Dreamcatcher. It has very similar themes, at least for me. It's about a group of guys who have been friends since they were children, and they get together once a year and go to this cabin where they like hunt and they just kind of hang out and do stuff and just kind of like, you know, group together and catch up and stuff. And then they get attacked by aliens, and these aliens are super creepy. They are very parasitic and just and this one was made into a movie as well, which was also very good, but the book was just really well done. And I think that Stephen King has such a gift for writing about what it's like to be a kid, which is a huge theme in it as well. That bond that you have with the people that you were friends with when you were a kid is like no other that you'll have in your life. And he's just so good at that, and that's very much what Dreamcatcher is about. It is also very much about, again, fate and destiny, and how you'll meet people in your life that, you know, at first it might not seem like they serve a real purpose, but then something will happen and it's like they were meant to be there with you, or they were meant to be a part of something with you. And that's very much what Dreamcatcher is about, and how someone that you meet when you're 5 years old, it could be 40 years before that moment comes, but you realize why they were meant to be in your life all this time. So it was just a really amazing book, but also, like I said, terrifying, because like the aliens in Dreamcatcher are just freaky. Okay, next up we have Lise A Story, and this is basically, it's a love story done in a Stephen King fashion. It is about a marriage that ended a little bit abruptly. It's about a woman whose husband dies, and she is kind of going through all of his paperwork and going through his study and trying to clean up stuff and clean stuff out and kind of move on with her life. And he was a writer, so she's finding all kinds of things, and she starts to discover things about him that and his writing that she just didn't know, and the kinds of places, that's all I'll say, places that he went to get that inspiration to write, and how she was so in love with this man, but there was so much she didn't know. And I think that the main theme of the book is about marriage and relationships like that, long-lasting relationships, and how they change over time, and how, especially I think being married to someone who's creative, like a writer, an artist, how they sometimes have this whole separate being about themselves that they keep locked up that you don't know about and stuff. And it was just phenomenal book. I loved it. Like I said, it was a great love story, but it was a Stephen King book. So that was another great example of him being able to write these like wonderful characters in this very like intense, just wonderful personal story. Next up we have 11/22/63, and this book was pretty awesome. It is about a guy who goes back in time to try to prevent the assassination of JFK, which is something that I think a lot of people have thought about, you know, over the years. Like, how different would America and the world be today if he had not been assassinated? So it's just a fascinating story about, obviously, about time travel and changing history. What does that mean when we go, if we were able to go back and change something, especially something as major as the assassination of a president? What would that do to the world? And in some ways, it's kind of a cautionary tale about that, because sometimes the difference, the change, might not be that much better. So overall, that was a great book. Also contains some really good, just really good characters and a good love story. So I would definitely recommend 11/22/63. Okay, so I can't talk about Stephen King and not talk about the Dark Tower series, because that is his golden child of all. It's an 8-book series that it's fantasy, and it's just amazing. It's about parallel worlds and how those worlds sometimes blend together a little bit. It is about, very much, just like a lot of his books, it's very much about destiny and what your purpose is on this earth. And it basically chronicles a man, a gunslinger named Roland Deschain. He is after this bad guy called the Man in Black, who, by the way, makes a lot of appearances in a lot of different Stephen King books. He is a very busy man, the Man in Black, because he pops up everywhere. And it's so fun when you're reading other not Dark Tower books that have Dark Tower connections to them. When you're reading a book and you're like, oh my gosh, when you've read the Dark Tower, it's really fun. It doesn't take away from anything if you haven't read the Dark Tower, but it might kind of just go over your head. But if you've read the Dark Tower, it's really fun to find those little like Easter eggs in his other books. It's great. And the Man in Black is definitely one of them. He shows up a lot. But anyways, Roland is after him because the Man in Black is trying to destroy the Dark Tower. And Roland is trying to prevent that from happening, because if the Dark Tower is destroyed, basically we're all destroyed with it. It's very powerful, and it's just a great fantasy series about parallel worlds and all of that. I would definitely recommend it. It's definitely his, like I said, his like best work. Alright guys, so those are my Stephen King recommendations. I think that these books would be great ones for people to kind of start out with that maybe haven't read Stephen King and kind of just want a stepping stone to get into maybe some of his heavier work. I think all of these were really good books, but were also very approachable. And please let me know in the comments if any of these books sound interesting to you, or if you know of any other Stephen King books or want to add to the list, any Stephen King books that you think would be great for maybe people that haven't read Stephen King yet, or have read a couple of his books and kind of don't know where to go from there, because I think it would be really fun to just kind of have a conversation about some of Stephen King's best work. And yeah, I would love to hear it. So that is all I have for today, guys. I hope that you are having a wonderful week. And if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will talk to you soon.